All right, crypto people, I'm bullish. You know why? Because I think Bitcoin is going to go up towards the end of this year, and it has a lot to do with the ETF. I'm here to say that there is a 50% chance, I think, that we get an ETF by the end of October, and a 90% chance that we get one by the end of January. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Didn't the SEC just delay them all, including ARCs, into January for the full 240 days that the SEC has to kind of decide on these things? Yes, they did. But there is one that they can't put off right now, and that is the Grayscale ETF. Now, remember, the SEC got pwned against Grayscale. They lost that lawsuit, and it's not in a circuit court, it's in an appeals court. So they basically have to appeal up to the Supreme Court, or they have to basically like find another excuse to deny the ETF, or they have to just approve the ETF. Now, they could, and they have until October 13th to decide when to do this. Now, the most logical step for a lot of analysts, including those at big banks like JP Morgan and others, say that the most sensible course of action is to actually allow the Bitcoin ETF, because they're unlikely to win an appeal at the Supreme Court. And if they actually change it to another reason like custody, it'll seem like they're just trying to do arbitrary reasons to actually deny that, which will lose the SEC face, first of all, and kind of kill its credibility in future lawsuits that it actually might bring up. Now, the SEC has already lost a lot of credibility and a lot of face, so they might not care. And Gary Gensler, if he is working for the big banks and the big banks want him to actually deny this ETF, he could just say, screw all of that, I'm going to deny and stonewall as long as I can. The thing is, eventually he will not be able to block a Bitcoin ETF anymore. And like it or not, under his watch, a Bitcoin spot ETF is going to come into being. But he's just stonewalling as much as possible. Now, it's weird that I'm saying this because a lot of the big banks like JP Morgan and others are saying that a Bitcoin spot ETF approval is inevitable and the SEC is just stonewalling. Wouldn't it be funny if the SEC was stonewalling on their behalf? That would be an evil plot that they can think up of. Like, oh, we can actually pretend to be on the Bitcoin ETF side, but we can just Gensler stonewall as long as possible while we fill our bags. That is actually a very possible scenario. I'm not saying that's the scenario. I'm just saying, it's possible that that's the scenario. Not really sure if that's actually true or not, and obviously I don't have any proof, but let's just put it out there. It's possible. But beyond that, if the SEC wants to save some kind of face and preserve some kind of credibility in terms of their regulation credentials, they would actually approve a Bitcoin ETF around the middle of October. Now, I think for me, there is a very good chance the SEC focused on custody instead of what they had their excuse on to delay the ETF, and they stonewall it until next year. But I think Gensler and the SEC has to know that they can't actually win. I actually think an appeal is kind of unlikely because they're just not going to win the appeal. And that would just hurt the SEC more than it actually already has. So like the SEC says they're reviewing all other options right now, but it's just very unlikely. I do think they might go with the custody case. But like I said, that would hurt their credibility and basically kill it more than it's already been killed. I'm not really sure. I mean, if I were the SEC, I would definitely just approve the ETF in October. And October 13th, I'm not really sure if the government shutdown is going to last that long. Hopefully they get it together after a week or so, but I don't actually think this is actually affected by the shutdown. The deadline is October 13th, and they have to actually approve it, try to stonewall it more, or appeal the decision. And I think it rounds down to whether they're going to stonewall it more or try to appeal the decision. I'm not really sure which one they're going to do. I know which one I hope they'll do, but I'm not really sure if they'll actually do that particular option. Now, that's the 50%. I think it's 50-50 whether they try to stonewall again and lose more face, or they just approve the ETF decision. And some of the experts are saying the SEC is not going to approve an ETF a second earlier than they actually have to. And they're playing that out by actually delaying these ETFs from like Bitwise, VanEck, even BlackRock, and Fidelity. The other thing is The ARK Invest ETF, the final deadline date is January 10th. Remember that date, folks, January 10th. And I think the SEC basically has to approve. There's a bunch of these ETFs coming up. And the thing is, like, if they deny one, they kind of have to deny all of them. And BlackRock and Fidelity generally have a really, really good track of getting their ETF proposals accepted. They will be kind of mad at Gary Gensler if he actually denies the ETF. And I think like Congress and other lawmakers are getting very, very sick of Gensler as well. I mean, I know the Republicans want to get rid of him just because he's from the other party, but even within the Democratic Party, there's several congressmen that really want to get rid of Gary Gensler as well. So his time is coming. And the more he denies and the more he obstructs, the faster his time is coming to an end in terms of being the SEC commissioner. Now, some of you are saying he's probably just getting paid from the big banks and the powers that be. I'm not really sure if he is. If he is, I bet it's going to get found out. Because I do think like one of the congressmen actually did mention to put like him in jail or something. I don't know if that's serious or not. I don't think he's actually going to jail unless there's actual fraud found in the FTX case, which I highly doubt. But they could actually recall him or fire him as commissioner if they actually have the required number of votes in Congress. I don't think they do right now, but it's a toss-up and it's really anyone's guess. So the thing is, like, the 50% of ETF approval this month is the Grayscale thing, and 90% is ARK Invest. Because the thing is, like, if they approve ARK Invest, they're going to approve all the others too, because they're all in the same boat. And if they deny ARK Invest, they can't really approve any of the others because they're all exactly the same thing. So they wouldn't actually have justification to deny ARK and then approve everything else. That would be a huge calamity for the SEC itself. So I doubt they're going to deny all those ETFs next year on their final decision date, sometime between January and March. And because of that, I think like by January 10th, on January 10th, if they don't actually approve an ETF this month, they will almost have to approve an ETF then, and that will be the start of a bull market. Now, the dates are very, very well known for this thing. So, what happens when the dates are well known is that there's a run-up starting long in advance. It starts slowly and then it actually builds up. So, given that the date is actually in January, I do believe that the run-up will probably start in October or November. So it won't be a massive run-up, like we're not going to reach an all-time high. But I think like by January, we could actually reach $45,000, $50,000 fairly easily. It won't be an all-time high because like the sentiment isn't there. The interest rates are still way too high. And investors just don't have the money right now. But $45,000, $50,000 is definitely a big, big possibility when it comes to this. Now, that might seem high because it's only $26,000 right now or $27,000, but I think people forget how fast this stuff can rise. And with the ETFs coming on board, I bet some of those companies, especially like BlackRock and Fidelity, they're probably already buying through back channels, and that will result in a net positive uptrend for crypto as the OTC market begins to tighten even more as these big institutions start to buy Bitcoin. Because I think BlackRock and Fidelity also knows that the ETF approval is pretty much inevitable and it's coming within the next few months. And they know that like if they're going to be approved, then there's no reason to deny something like ARK. So they're probably looking at January 10th as well as the final deadline. And they're probably buying Bitcoin at these low prices as they are right now, because it really wouldn't make any sense for them to actually wait any longer for the prices to get higher, because they know that there's creeping tension and creeping pressure upwards as we get to the date that these ETFs will actually get approved. The thing is, like, Bitcoin tends to swing wildly on events that people don't really see coming, but on events that people see coming, like this ETF, it doesn't tend to swing wildly on that date. It tends to react slowly as we actually get to that day. So there actually might be a small dump on the day the ETFs get approved as expectations come into reality. But as we go up to that date, I'm expecting November and December to be fairly bullish. Yes, people have mentioned to me that the Q4 before the halving is usually bullish, and I'm kind of expecting that as well. But I think it's really going to be built on this time the likely approval of the ETFs in January. Like I said, I'm giving it like a 90% chance. There's always a chance that something actually goes wrong. Obviously, the SEC can just stonewall as hard as possible, really go in on the custody thing, and then deny ARCs, and then deny everyone's ETF. But I think they're going to make a lot of enemies there, and the SEC has lost a lot of face and credibility already, and they're racking up court case losses. And the thing is, like, if they deny Grayscale on another some random like clause, I feel like Grayscale can just take them to court again and actually win against them in court, because the judges do not actually seem very impressed by the SEC's reasoning. So I hope an ETF gets approved on the 13th, and I really hope an ETF gets approved on January 10th. And I'm betting that Bitcoin will have like a very positive uptrend from now until January 10th because of this. And I'm looking at like $50,000 hopefully by January 10th of next year. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.